My fellow colleagues, my name is Amanda Valenti. As you know, I teach fifth grade, and this is a presentation that I am going to share with you about digital tools and strategies that we can use in the fifth grade classroom. And this is for EDUC 6713. All right, so you may be wondering, why should we start integrating technology into the classroom even more so? And it's time for a change. The main purpose is that education needs to fit the society that it serves. And it's no longer the 1950s, 60s, or 70s even. Gone are the days of the three R's: reading, writing, arithmetic. We need to start to tap into the generation that's before us and provide them with an education for things that they're already dabbling in. We need to teach them certain skills with technology, how to use technology for educational purposes, because it is a vast difference between personal use and educational use. So, as we already know, as educators, we always strive to develop educational goals and drive our instruction to prepare our learners for college and careers. And in the world we live today, college and careers are very uh, technology savvy and integrate a lot of different technologies. So we need to gear our instruction towards preparing them for those two paths. So in the 21st century, we have some distinct skills, more than just content knowledge, that our learners need to grasp. Now, many of these I'm well aware of that I already include in my classroom, and some I can vouch for I need to improve upon a little bit. So those skills are persistence, innovation, creativity, collaboration, flexibility, critical thinking, communication, self-direction, problem solving, initiative, and wellness. As you well know, we've been working on wellness in the past year at our school. So these are skills that our learners need to have in order to be successful in the 21st century. And like I said, many of them are already inherently in our lessons, but I can see a few that I could use a little brushing up on. So, why do we need to do these things and why do we need to change? Well, before us, we have a different generation. We have a generation that is born after 1990 and have had technology at their fingertips, and they are defined by their use of technology and their media. Every generation, though, has had its own technology. Thinking back to the Paleolithic people that we study in fifth grade, the flint axe and the fire was a form of technology. So each generation that comes has its own technology that comes with it. These digital tools and technologies, like I said before, are in our learners' everyday lives. We have to expand the educational purposes for these technologies and teach them about how they can use them for learning and for academics. And remember, transitioning into this 21st century classroom does not have to be done today, tomorrow, overnight. It shouldn't overwhelm or frighten anyone, but every year, we can take a step in the right direction. So I've come up and I've selected with 4 digital strategies or tools that I feel are to be showcased to my peers, my colleagues, and to get your feedback on. So the first one I came across is blended delivery slash the flipped classroom. Now, with the pandemic that we have just experienced, we have actually been doing a great deal of blended delivery this year, being that we were in school for a certain amount of time and now we have been home. I don't think that's quite the concept behind blended delivery. I think it's meant to be always done in school, some things at home, of course, but not quite to this extent. But anyway, blended delivery combines both face to face learning and online instruction. I know that we use a program called iReady, which would be suitable for the online instruction part. If blended delivery doesn't sound so familiar, it's better known and sometimes referred to as the flipped classroom. What you can do there is you can have the learners explore, watch a video, read up on something the night before, and then when they come to class, they can do a variety of activities, whether they be face to face or online activities, to further explore that topic. Um, Blended classes allow teachers the ability to transform the where, when, why, and how of the learning in the 21st century. For each of my strategies or tools, I'll also share some advantages that I see. So the first advantage of blended delivery is to improve it improves access to instruction. So it improves the learner's access. So if someone's absent or someone misses a great deal of school, or if we have a pandemic, they're still able to access their instruction. It is able to be customized because of the online learning portion, as we know with our program iReady. It teaches learners to both use digital communication tools as well as in person communication, but the digital part will help prepare them for college and beyond and careers. And it actually can help improve the communication between learner to learner and teacher to learner. And lastly, it has been shown with a study that I found to promote engagement. The next is a digital tool for the 21st century, and it is known as podcasts. Podcasts are audio or sometimes video casting. They can be listened to, which is interesting and great in its own regard, but it could also be created by the learners. So it's really a two-way street with podcasts. The good thing about teachers creating podcasts are that they can be archived and used again and again from year to year. So if you happen to make or find a great podcast, it can be archived and pulled up again in future years. And podcasting overall centers on two important skills, which are very inherent in our Common Core, which are speaking and listening skills. So, the advantages that I see of using podcasts in the classroom are that the learners get to take an active role and they get to create their content, and they can also listen to content as well. Through listening and speaking, they build their own literacy and fluency. Many podcasts exist already as exemplars. They are free and accessible. And podcasts can actually be, as I stated before, part of that blended delivery or flipped classroom, can be done ahead of time, and then activities can be built around that podcast. More on podcasts, I found an interesting article according to Vandenberg 2018, who writes that podcasts can help flip the learning experience, like I said, provide a stimulus for student writing, model form, language, and structure, provide ideas for writing, and then for relating directly to 21st century skills, stimulate pre-writing, brainstorming, creativity, modeling reflection, stimulating critical and creative thinking, and help learners understand the complexity of the writing process. The third tool or strategy is technology for assessments. Using technology for assessments is a very interesting and, again, double-edged sword. It helps the educator and it also helps the learner. So what I found here is that EdTech, educational technology, can be an aid to the teacher in that it can help track students over time and track their progress, as we've seen. It can aid in your formative assessments. So if you make a quick Google form to go with a lesson, the EdTech can certainly help you. It can boost your student engagement. Students may not be so willing to take tests and quizzes on paper, but might enjoy taking them on technology, so technology-based. Um, we can use the assessments through technology to identify any knowledge gaps, and then from there, help support deeper learning. Technology-based assessments, known as TBA, they measure not only cognitive skills, but 21st century skills as well, because they're using technology to take the assessment. So how well can they use that piece of technology to test their knowledge? TBA can provide educators with very specific, targeted, and dynamic, ever changing information about learners. And it can be done much faster than sitting at home grading a stack of papers. And as always, it is cost, I should have put and time effective for teachers as well. Advantages to using technology for assessments is it can be very flexible. If you cannot reach a learner in the classroom, maybe you can send the assessment to their house or to homework, or they can do it in a different study skills period, but it gives you the flexibility of having the learner access the assignment or assessment anywhere. It helps us improve our feedback. We can, from that feedback, then we can learn what the differences are and cater to them in our classroom. And it can help even something as simple as a polling of how students are doing. I know with the pandemic hopefully ending and maybe school resuming, we're going to all have to be conscious of the students' social emotional learning, and they're not always confident and eager to share out loud. So even these assessments could be something simple like a feelings poll done online, and the students might actually open up more and communicate easier their emotions since they're not having to do it face to face. And because they're using these technology assessments, it's likely they'll see this kind of thing in college and then perhaps something in their careers as well, maybe professional development in their own careers or certifications in their own careers may be assessed online or using technology. And the fourth tool is digital presentation tools, which I'm using right now. Um, as you well know, they allow learners to share their own thoughts, ideas, and content, and it can be done in really unique and interesting ways with color and shapes and transitions and music. But it allows learners to be a little more excited about these presentations, hopefully. Some very popular choices out there are, as you see, Slides. There's also Prezi, Biteable, Powtoon, Easily, Animoto, Glogster, and VoiceThread. With VoiceThread, though, you may want to have a discussion about being a good digital citizen before you use VoiceThread, as VoiceThread has the ability for users to comment on each other's presentations. The good thing about digital presentation tools is that they're mainly free. I've run into a few glitches here and there, but for the most part, there is free versions of everything that is around. Um, Advantages of these digital presentation tools are learners can use technology to communicate all of their ideas. It can engage the learner, and it also engages the audience as well, who's watching instead of just listening to someone talk. And it allows the learner to put their ideas and thoughts down and organize them in a great way and present to their peers as well. Presenting is also part of the Common Core. So, existing in the world is something called ISTE standards, and those standards are the International Society for Technology and Education. And applying these tools that I just shared with you, these 4 tools and strategies, I'm going to show you how each one meets some of the ISTE standards. And I just linked the site here for students. So here are the ISTE standard for students. We have empowered learner, digital citizen, knowledge constructor, innovative designer, computational thinker, creative communicator, and global communicator. So for the blended learning flipped classroom, the ones that I thought fit were that this particular strategy empowers learners as they build networks, customize their learning, and use technology to provide feedback and demonstrate their learning. For podcasts, I thought it met the following standards: allows learners to critically curate resources to construct their own knowledge. For technology-based assessments, allow learners to be computational thinkers, empower them to use technology to demonstrate their competencies. And for digital presentation, allow learners to use technology and the design process to create imaginative solutions and products. It also allows learners to practice good digital citizenship. And finally, allows learners to creatively communicate. In the last part of this presentation, I put together a 5th grade technology-infused project, incorporating all 4 of the tools and strategies that I shared. So the project is this. Learners will be creating a mini podcast about a historical event or person of their choosing. Learners will brainstorm, write, and produce a dramatic reimagining of a historical event or person or time period. Learners may add music and sound effects to make their podcast come alive. Learners will assess each other's technology-based using technology-based assessment tools for polling and feedback. Step 1, blended delivery, flipped classroom, and a podcast too. Step 1, as an exemplar at home, students will listen to an episode from a podcast called Tides of History. This podcast has a wide range of topics from world history. Step 2, podcast. As a final product, students will write their own transcript and produce a 3-minute podcast about a historical topic of their own choosing. Step 3, digital presentation. Students will create a digital presentation with the software of their choosing to go along with their podcast. The presentation will contain only images, as the spoken part of the presentation will be featured in the podcast. Additionally, the presentation should contain a link to the podcast, and students will share the digital presentation and podcast with the class. Step 4, technology-based assessment. Students will use Mentimeter.com to provide feedback to the presenters on their podcast and digital presentation. Mentimeter is a technology-based assessment tool for learners to use to provide and receive feedback from peers. Benefits of this project. Learners using this technology and these different tools and strategies will create, produce, publish, and write their own podcast, which helps them to present information clearly and ideas. Learners will introduce topics, preview what is to follow, organize ideas, concepts, and information into broader categories as appropriate to achieving purpose. And finally, learners work with multimedia platforms to receive and deliver content. And then these are just my references. So I thank you so much for participating in the presentation today. Attached to the email that you will receive with this is an exit ticket for me to use in terms of my class. So just a few, 5 questions, I believe. Name, please. Grade level that you teach, please. The first question is, what digital tool or strategy did you find to be the most interesting and why? The second one, were there any tools or strategies that you already use? If so, which ones? Number 3, which digital tool or strategy do you think you could incorporate into your classroom? Number 4, which digital tool or strategy do you think would be most beneficial to you and why? And finally, which digital tool or strategy do you think would be most useful to your students and why? Thanks so much.